Captain, I relieve you of your command of this ship. Cobb, escort the captain to his stateroom. I'm assuming command.
You're not assuming anything.
Chief of the boat, Captain Ramsey's under arrest. Lock him in his stateroom.
Captain, please.
Now, Cobb!
Hello and welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where we are continuing our exploration of Tony Scott's Crimson Tide. My name is Steve Morris. I'm a filmmaker and directing instructor in Los Angeles, California.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Rocha. I'm a writer, producer, host, and voiceover artist in San Diego, California.
And of course, there could not be a Cine-Files without our supporters on patreon.com and Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much for your support. We hope that you're enjoying our Cine-Files shorts as well as ad-free versions of the show. We just did our last watch-along, which was Avengers Age of Ultron. We haven't picked our watch-along for the month of June, but you could definitely sign up to Patreon and listen to that, as well as join our advisory board or on Apple Podcasts. You can support us there as well. And thank you for all your support.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much. Another way you can support us here on the show is when you listen to the show and you listen to the commercials. If there's a product that stands out to you and you want to try it out, please remember to use our code. It's really important because it keeps these people who sponsor the show sponsoring us every month. And you hear the ads. And I know ads can be annoying and all of that, and I totally get it. But we'd like to vet our ads, and we like to work with people who we enjoy working with and products that we have tried. And certainly some of you have made us aware of products that you don't appreciate being promoted on the show. And we've taken steps to remove those products. So we hear you. We're interactive with you. So we appreciate if you would be interactive with our sponsors here and try out their products if you are interested in them, and use our code so you get massive discounts and encourage them to keep supporting us here on the show.
So, John, since our last recording of Crimson Tide, I have been thinking quite a bit about our conversation.
That doesn't sound like Steve Morris thinking about our conversation at all.
Totally aberrant behavior for me. And I've been thinking I think you will agree, among our most contentious episodes, really, in a long time, maybe ever.
Yeah. And someone responded with one of the comments saying, I don't like it when you guys fight. And it's like, this is part of debating a movie, whether you like it or don't like it. And it's actually fun to do it I could count on my one hand how many times we've had a difference of opinion that is extended through an entire episode or movie in the 9-year or plus history of the Cine-Files,
No, our tastes largely line up. Yep. And while we have obviously differences of opinions, they don't usually dig in like this one did. And it's made me think that I feel like this has brought out another element of film and film fandom that you and I have never really talked about, which is that a small thing can shape the whole angle in which you view all the behavior that's subsequent to it in a film. And so as I've reviewed because always before we have a conversation, I always review my notes to make sure it's fresh in my mind. And I really made a concerted effort this time to really review my notes from the things I learned from your perspective and think about, okay, well, this is how I've always seen this moment, but maybe this moment would be seen a little differently. And I just wanted to tell very quickly a story because I think it relates to this thing, which is that there are two movies that I've seen twice where the first time I saw them, I had one experience, and the second time I saw them, and I had an entirely different experience. And those two movies are Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and the other one is Wild at Heart from David Lynch. And both of them, the first time I saw them were with, let's say, crazy arty people.
Sure.
And I had a great time. They were really funny, fun movies. And the second time I saw them were with different people who were less creative arty types. And they were both really serious, heavy, difficult movies.
Yeah.
And just that little bit of framing and really just who was I sitting with when I watched it changed the movie.
Yeah.
And I think in this case, like for me, this movie, Crimson Tide, has always been, while I have criticisms of some of the characters, particularly Gene Hackman's characters, has always been two honorable people trying to do their duty with different methods. And so I saw it in a very specific way.
Yeah.
And that's not how you see the film. And that changes the whole nature of the film. You know?
And I think what's great about that, and it's why we work together as a tandem, I did the exact same thing in a different way. I rewatched where we left off of after we did part one and tried to see it through your eyes. Like, I'm trying to see what Steve sees here in these back and forths, in these moments, as the pressure builds on Ramsey. And so not looking at my notes, trying to see it through, like I did essentially the same thing you did, but in my way, right? Because I don't have notes. I just do it through visual stuff and what I remember. So for me, I was trying to like look at these scenes and go, okay, how does Steve see it this way? Because I totally see it this way. I'm interested to see why does he see it? Well, maybe I might be right here. Maybe he'll see my point of view here. And then other ones like, okay, I could see how is, because he is a good captain in a lot of moments in the movie. I don't dispute that. And maybe I was a bit unfair in the last episode, not making it very clear that I do respect the fact that he is a captain and has gone into war multiple times. And that he is a good captain, because there are actually some moments here, even amidst all the madness of mutinies and counter mutinies and all of this, where he's taking moments to be respectful to his men. But there are also moments where he pulls a gun on a soldier, on a naval guy, where it's like, wow, you're really threatening this man's life who's got nothing to do with what's going on. So there are just interesting ways to look at. So yeah, and I think that speaks volumes to why we like to do our show. We both respect each other's opinions, and we try to see where the other person is coming from, and we don't turn it into a full-scale battle where one of us storms off and that's the end of the episode or whatever, because that solves nothing. As we see,
at least not as far as anyone knows.
Yeah, right.
We might have just edited those things out.
That's true. Fuck this. Edit it out. Well, someday we'll release the unedited episode.
Yeah, there you go. Well, and I also think it points out something about humans, which is that you can have a thing where someone just says something that is like totally the opposite of your point of view. And our tendency is to go, well, they're crazy. Obviously, they're crazy. They're dumb. They don't get it. They're whatever. And it's like, no, they might be just coming from a different perspective. And that different perspective has led to a series of different conclusions that got them to a different place. Well,
we always bring our own stuff to movies, right? And look, directors, because to me, it's very clear in my mind what Tony Scott is trying to say between these two men in the movie, right? But it did surprise me that you see it completely differently. So it was an interesting experience to see it that way in our first episode. So, but you always bring your stuff as a human being to whatever movie you watch, and it'll trigger or cause you to feel certain ways about certain things because certain things resonate realistically or universally in your life. So I like that about this movie. And as I said through part one, this movie is still a resonant movie 30 years later because of some of the commentary and some of the back and forths that are going on and some of the conversations about power and a person who maybe feels they should always be right. And that's how dangerous that is. And everyone must bend the knee to them or else, and so it's an interesting commentary.
It's so funny too, because I started our last episode with saying, this is a Steve movie. This is why I love this movie. This is all those things. If I had watched the movie that you saw, I would never have said any of those things. Right. You know what I mean? Like all the craftsmanship, the great performances, everything. Well, but that's all still there.
Right.
But it wouldn't be a beloved movie if it's about this guy who really needs to be right and keep down other people. And that movie's totally motivatable in the things that you see. It's totally there, but I wouldn't love that movie.
Yeah.
I would admire it, but wouldn't love it.
Right.
So speaking of which, let's get back into this where we just left off. We had just had a fire in the galley, a drill intentionally called in the middle of that fire that obviously Hunter did not agree with. And then a conversation between Captain Ramsey and Hunter in the quarters where he gave him a dressing down. And now we're in the moments after. And what does Hunter do when he's mad? Man, he exercises and we see him boxing. And everything about his character and Denzel's portrayal of him for me is this is a disciplined guy.
Yes.
Across the board in every possible way.
And he has to be. I think for him, that's what he holds on to keep him level, to keep him composed, and to keep him from overreacting. He works it out while working out, basically. It gets it out of his system while working out. And you also see the intensity. And again, this is Denzel on the come up. This is Denzel in his prime in the mid-90s there. And so you get this, he just radiates movie star. If you can just watch someone jump rope and you're like completely transfixed by what he's doing and the intensity on his face, he's got that that you can't explain.
And then he's talking to his closest friend on the boat after, which is Weps. And by the way, one of the things I found out, this is totally unrelated, but is I was like, why do they call a submarine a boat? because they frequently, it's chief of the boat, and we talk about the boat and not a ship, because generally it's usually a size thing.
Right.
And one of the things that I've always heard is that you can load a boat on a ship, but you can't load a ship on a boat. That's the difference. And it's like, well, why do we call submarines? I mean, this thing's huge.
Yeah.
You know, it's filled with missiles. Why is this a boat and not a ship? And the reason is because early submarines were boats. Submarines from back at the War of 1812, they had room for 2 people, maybe.
Right.
And so, and they just like there's still cavalry traditions in like air cav and stuff like that.
Mhm.
There's still, this is a boat tradition. We don't want to be like the rest of the Navy guys. That's why we call them boat.
Yeah, makes sense.
Anyway, so Web's his closest friend on the boat is doing some ironing. And the first thing he asks is,
Does it make any sense to you to start a drill in the middle of a fire?
so he said he was cool in the meeting with Ramsey, but he's still stewing over this whole thing.
Oh, totally.
Fire's out, wasn't it?
Yeah, and a man died too.
Not because of what the captain did.
What?
So he said one thing had nothing to do with the other in the previous scene with the captain.
Right.
But that's not exactly how he feels.
No, 100%. Again, you know why? Because he wanted to get out of that interaction with the captain. And remember, the captain, what does he say at the end? He didn't die because of the drill. He died because he was fat. That's what a captain says about this guy, right? So that's how little regard he had for that guy, in my opinion. And then so when you see him here, this is where he can let his walls down and tell the truth to someone who he thinks is his friend, who he thinks he can trust, and speaks about these things more openly, gives him his honest feelings. And that happens all the time in the military. You got to have one person that you can just kind of have a conversation with about this stuff and tell your actual feelings. And, you know, there's different things you say to people in power and who are your superiors, because you just want to get out of that situation and give them what they want.
A fire is a serious threat to the ship. Now, where was it? Why didn't he check it out first, huh?
That's his style. He's a hard ass.
And then he has a speech where he basically explains these 2 schools.
2 schools of thought here. To him, you're Annapolis, Harvard, expert on theory, well-versed in world affairs. He's had his head up his ass driving ships for the last 25 years.
I think there's a number of ways to look at this scene, which I think is fascinating. As I said, I went back and rewatched this stuff to kind of see it through multiple perspectives, including yours. And to me, I see Denzel, or Hunter rather, being this character who is saying, like, this guy is not 100% there. There's something off about this guy. And his buddy, who has been on the ship and served with Ramsey, is saying, no, man, you need to get along. You need to figure out how to work with guys like this. And this is the truth in life, right? You can be upset and be righteous and have all this indignation, and you have every right to have your indignation. But when you're working with someone who is in charge of you, you've got to figure out how to get along with that person. If you don't trust or like or believe or agree with that person's decisions, you've still got to get along, especially in the military, because as you said, Steve, earlier, episode 1, like, so much is dependent on a nuclear submarine of things working like clockwork. And so this idea that he's like telling him, but there's also another way to look at this, in that Webs has been indoctrinated into the cult of Ramsey, in that we have all just kind of been accepted the fact that this guy, we have to do things a certain way so that this guy is happy and we can get along with our careers and we can serve out our years and get our money and do our things and do our job. And no one wants to upset him because he's got this power. Well, why does he have this power? Well, because he's in the military and he's got that ranking, but also because no one wants to step up to him, because I imagine in my mind that he has stepped on people who have ever tried to step to him, who are of lower rank, and they've all witnessed it at different times through their time serving with Ramsey. So there are 2 ways to look at it, but I prefer to look at it as Webs trying to speak to him about how to get along with Ramsey so that there's not this conflict, right? We think about nowadays, people all the time try to say, like, you got to figure out how to understand the other side so you can find some common agreement on things. So it's a fascinating little scene here between them.
It's so funny. And you know, obviously we're going to hit at our different framing of the situation throughout, because that's where we are.
Yeah.
But like, so for me, it's like what comes to the fore, you know? And so for you, it's more about he is uncomfortable with other people taking authority away from him, and people don't question him because he's going to get upset or because of his insecurities or because he feels the need to continually show his power.
Yeah.
And for me, it's because he's the captain of the ship, and that the captain of the ship gets to set the tone for their ship, you know, and because he's earned it with years of actually being in combat and commanding ships over many, many years or decades of experience, you know. and how much you weigh each of those things. Because I'm not denying the fact that there's some insecurity with this guy. I think there definitely is. But how you weigh them it frames how you see what's going on here.
Right. Yeah.
We see day 6, 26 October, 0631 Zulu time. Well, I had to check this of like, why is it Zulu time? Where is Zulu time? Well, Zulu time is actually Greenwich Mean Time. And what it is that there isn't any reason to obey local time when you're underwater for long stretches at a time.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter when the sun is rising because the sun isn't rising where you are. So once this nuclear, and this is what I checked, is once a nuclear submarine is underwater for a while, they all switch to Zulu time.
Yeah.
It's not based on where they are. It's based on this. So it could be 3 a.m. It could be 4 p.m.
Right.
It's Zulu time.
Right.
I just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
And then we get an EAM, an emergency action message. And you could see just in everybody's performance the difference between this is a drill, we've done this lots of times before, and oh shit.
Con radio receiving emergency action message. Recommend alert 1. Recommend alert 1.
Alert 1, incoming emergency action message.
I've never served on a ship, right? But I was in military intelligence. So all of this stuff, there are versions of this in the Army where you have to authenticate, you train on getting messages, and you train on whether you're paying attention to the codes, to the letters, the sequence of letters, all of that, the military codes for them, all of that. So I love that they included that in here because it's actually very true. You have to go through a number of steps to verify this stuff so that you know it's authentic, and even more so for a nuclear sub, I imagine.
Well, and the interesting thing you see this time is sure we have this codes and all the procedures, but they look at that piece of paper first.
Yes. 100%.
They're not waiting to see. They're not just sitting there coyly not looking.
Right.
They look. And it reads, Russian nuclear missile launch codes compromised. Set DEFCON 3.
The last time we hit this state of emergency was 32 and a half years ago during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
I don't think he would have let Hunter deliver this briefing if Hunter hadn't kind of acquiesced to him in the earlier scene, right?
Sure.
And so that fact that he's, and look, and this is great for the movie. We're getting an example of what Hunter is like leading men. Just in this conversation, in this briefing, it's very clear, it's very respectful, and he's making it make them all very aware of the seriousness of the situation and laying out what's expected, then respectfully hands the control of the meeting over to the captain. And I think we see some of the best of Ramsey here. I think he's very clear about what needs to be communicated to all of them. And he says, talk to your people, let them know what's going on. And I see none of the other stuff that I've had issues with Ramsey before in previous scenes. I see a strong commander here and a strong captain here who cares for his men.
I mean, regardless of what you think of Ramsey, he does care about presenting the chain of command in the way it's supposed to be presented.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
He does. As long as it's convenient for him, yes. In my opinion.
Sure. So,
he certainly doesn't when he gets relieved of his duties. He certainly doesn't like respecting the chain of command, but all right. Yeah.
But anyway, so the other, this is a totally stupid thing. This is one of the stupid things that screenwriters have to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And frequently they don't. And I'm just going to point it out because it cracks me up and most people don't think about it.
Yeah.
And that is the last time we hit this state of emergency was 32 and a half years ago during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Right.
Interesting line. The line sounds better when you say 32 and a half years. Had you said 32 years, that doesn't sound as good.
Oh, interesting.
But here's the thing.
Okay.
Is that the Cuban Missile Crisis, very famously, was in October.
Yes.
And we just saw a sign that said it's October right now. So it isn't 32 and a half years ago. It's 32 years ago.
Right.
So what screenwriters have to do frequently is math. And they have to count stuff to make sure they get it right. And then what happens is you change some other thing in the screenplay.
Right.
And then you have to remember to redo the math.
Yeah.
And my guess is at some point, probably in post, they switched something to make it October, but nobody thought about the fact that now that this 32 and a half years no longer makes sense. And nobody other than very few people are paying attention to this. But this is one of the weird jobs of filmmaking that people don't think about.
Yeah, it's usually what script coordinator is supposed to do, that, right? Or script continuity, whoever does continuity. Maybe
no, because that's more about what they're doing. What the coordinator's doing is they're watching the actors and going, "Well, which hand did they lift something up with?"
Right. Okay.
Nobody's checking this shit other than the writer or someone will read. Usually, what happens is the prop person comes up to you and said, "Hey, by the way, did you notice that this thing doesn't add up to that thing?" And then you go, "Fuck." I've had them. It happens all the time. Like one of the hardest ones I ever did was just a scene where people are betting.
Oh yeah,
and all the dialogue is like a poker game. And it's like people are raising, and I had to make sure that. And then because a piece of dialogue changed, then someone didn't bet because they had folded, and then the number was wrong, and then I had to go through and figure out all the math again to figure out how much was in the pot and what each bet was. It's like it's a pain in the ass.
Or the 10 people who are going to be paying attention to it and comment on YouTube about it. Yeah, it's
exactly.
The NCA has determined that should our satellites detect rebel missiles being fueled, which means they could be launched in just over 1 hour, we'll be compelled to act.
I wanted to focus on this just because of the phrase compelled to act.
Mm-hmm.
Because we'll have this a lot, which is that's a euphemism.
Yeah.
Is that you don't say we're going to be compelled to launch our nuclear weapons, killing millions of people and launching a nuclear war.
Right.
They all know that's what we're talking about.
Right. Right.
And who do we cut to when we say the words compelled to act? Cut to Weps.
Yeah.
Because it's always going to remind you this is the guy that is going to have to do it.
There's a lot of really good cuts. Like you were talking about the editing in this movie in the first part, and I focused on it more again when I was rewatching it. I was like, yeah, there's a lot of moments where Tony Scott is telling you clearly, at least in my mind, what to feel or what to think or what is happening here. And you're right. Cutting to Weps is another example of that from the editing, where it's a bit of a subtle foreshadowing how much important he's going to be as this goes along.
Now, given our patrol sector here in the Emperor Seamounts, it seems clear that our friends in the Pentagon are setting us up for a potential preemptive strike.
So I looked it up. The Emperor Seamounts it's an underwater mountain range. It goes from all the way from the Hawaiian Islands all the way up to Alaska, which means that where they really are is right at the Bering Strait. So they're probably right up next to Russia at this point.
They can see Russia from their sub.
It's important to remain focused. Keep your men informed. Any questions?
That's a good leader right there.
I agree 100%. Like I said, he's good here. Very good.
Yeah. And you could see as we cut around the room the nervousness of all the officers.
Yeah.
Because they know what they're dealing with.
But he's the one that's going to make the decision, but all their butts are on the line. And so there's a lot of nerves there. For all the talk and all the braggadocio, these are the moments that really test who you are.
It's later, we're in the galley, and Hunter is talking to like the cook when two guys in the background start fighting. And this is Danny Nucci, who plays Rivetti, and Eric Bruscotter, who is his antagonist.
Yeah. Danny Nucci, of course, from Titanic and a few other things, still working as an actor. So I loved seeing him in this. He had a nice little run in the 90s in these kinds of films. And then the other gentleman, some of you may remember him from Major League 2. He's the guy that comes in that's kind of not that smart. And I think Rube was his name, and they have him play the character there. So, not always the best role to play, but he plays him well. And in here, same thing. And of course, we're about to get to Tarantino's, another Tarantino addition to the script here.
It seems so. I mean, we have no confirmation of what specifically Tarantino wrote,
right.
But this seems so obvious because he pulls Rivetti out to the hallway, is pushing him to say what the fight is about. And I think Denzel is great in that sort of, I'm not going to let you get away with this kind of leader. Like this is not bullshit. I think he handles it perfectly. And then Rivetti says, and we have to believe that this is Tarantino.
Well, I said that the Kirby Silver Surfer was the only real Silver Surfer, and that the Mobius Silver Surfer was shit. And Benefield's a big Mobius fan.
The big Mobius fan.
First of all, having worked in a comic book store, having been at this era, I am not a comic book expert today, but at this era, I really was.
Yeah.
There's no ongoing feud between Mobius fans and Kirby fans. This is not a thing.
I don't recall that being a thing growing up like you, during the comic books. I don't recall people getting upset about this. I think nowadays there's more people upset that you're getting a female Silver Surfer instead of a male Silver Surfer in the Fantastic Four movie than there was Kirby versus the Mobius Silver Surfer. That's a very deep cut. It sounds like something Tarantino would argue with just nerdy friends back then.
Totally. I mean, I know lots of people who love Kirby, and most of those same people admire Mobius.
Yeah.
They're both geniuses. I think,
I lost my head, sir. I'm sorry.
Rivetti, you're a supervisor. You can get a commission like that
So you're 100% right.
And then we have the line that will endear an officer to all his nerdy underlings forever.
You have to set an example even in the face of stupidity. Now, everybody that reads comic books knows that Kirby's Silver Surfer is the only true Silver Surfer. Now, am I right or wrong?
You're right, sir.
All right, get out of here.
I love this because this is an example of how Hunter is a captain in his own way.
Totally.
And this conversation with Rivetti, who he clearly has a affinity for, and it speaks volumes that both Denzel and Danny Nucci immediately have this chemistry. We haven't really seen much of Rivetti up until this point, and so they're back and forth here. You sense that there is a care and a respect that Rivetti has for him, for Hunter, and Hunter reciprocates that. And Hunter's trying to teach him. I'm not going to waste time with that other doofus. You, I see a potential with, and you, I'm going to talk to and help you out and figure. And I'm going to dress you down. But at the end, I'm also going to give you a little wink and a smile with a comment. So you go away and you can absorb what I've tried to teach you and you can feel cared for. And so I love that that's the way Hunter manages his men. It's great.
Yeah, he is the perfect mix, I think, of capable of being a hard ass.
Yes.
But also giving you that little bit of support along with it. You know. The line, so I'm going to say something. I have absolutely zero evidence of this whatsoever. And yet I am 100%, I am convinced that I am right. And I will tell you what that is, which is the line is, and everybody that reads comic books knows that everybody that reads comic books, I am absolutely certain was not the original line. There was an executive that went, so is everyone going to understand what we're talking about? And it went to maybe Tarantino, and Tarantino's like, I'm not adding that to this line. And they said, we have to make sure people, because if I am talking to you about Mobius and Kirby, I know that you know who Mobius and Kirby are.
Right.
So I would never say to you, John, everybody that reads comic books knows that the Kirby is the only real Silver Surfer. I would just say everyone knows Kirby's the only real Silver Surfer. The only reason I say that is because I know people are listening who have no fucking idea what I'm talking about until you add that line in.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And I think we feel pretty good about this moment. And then we're off with Captain Ramsey, who is walking his dog, as you do. Yeah. And as you walk your dog pees. And it really bothers me. There seems to be no cleaning up the pee plan. Other than some other crew member has to come along and clean up the pee. Yeah, that pisses me off.
Yes. Yeah. It's a commentary on who he is as a person. Someone else will clean it up.
I agree.
Do what I want. And I like that Denzel Hunter walks up as the dog is peeing too, and to hand him that message and have this back and forth.
And I think they have a perfectly good captain, executive officer moment in discussing the speed of the missile drill and that it was behind. And Hunter is definitely disappointed, just as Ramsey is. And they're kind of talking about, redoing it.
Tell your buddy Weps we're going to do it again. We're going to keep on doing it until he gets it right.
And I think up to this moment, I feel this is work. They're doing pretty well together.
The captain has a right to request and require his men to hit a certain time because it's helpful. Yeah, no problem with any of that.
Well, and Hunter supports that. Yeah, we got to get this drill better. He knows that drill didn't work well.
Yep.
Feels like the whole crew needs a kick in the ass.
Or a pat on the back, sir. I just witnessed a fight down in Crew's Mess. No big deal, but I think the men are a little on edge with all we're going through.
There it is.
Right.
And this is, positive reinforcement versus negative reinforcement. This is what kind of leader you are. This is how you feel. And I'm so Team Hunter for all of this at this moment.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, I don't agree with everything Ramsey. And I definitely, what he's about to do, I hate. We were talking earlier about one moment. This is the moment for you?
This is the moment for me. 100%. This is where everything, this turns. The entire movie turns after this moment. Yeah.
Well, this is one of the key things I was thinking about in reviewing my notes, because there's also a moment much later on. There's very little, I think, that we can say, in my opinion, that is directly, overtly racial in most of the movie. There are hints of things. But one thing that is directly, overtly racial, in my opinion, is the discussion of the Lippinzahner Stallions when we get to the end of the movie.
100%. I also think the film cuts to Gandolfini in certain moments.
Totally.
To reaffirm the racial side of things. And
but it's not.
later when Denzel smacks his hand away when he tries to grab it.
Oh, one of my favorite moments in the
That's
movie,
great,
by the way.
right? Yeah.
But it's not,
and it shouldn't be overtly, right? Because
Right.
it's the subtlety is what makes it almost worse sometimes. You know.
the reason I bring it up is like part of it is like, well, how much when you discover things or see a moment later on, do they reinform the things that you saw at the beginning of the film?
Yeah.
And how much does it change it? And then how much does it change it the next time you watch the movie?
Yeah.
Because now you know, and like how much are those siloed or are they affecting you? And I did not let this moment affect my opinion of Ramsey early in the movie. And obviously it affects yours. And and there's an argument to be made that it absolutely should. Because this is a dick move that he's about to do.
Yeah, but for me, this move has been coming. So from the beginning, every time I've watched this movie, even from the first time, there were little things that he did that for me, as we said in the first part, I read them in a certain way. So that when he pulls this move, he is now done being subtle about it, and he is now going to put it on the table. And Tony Scott and the screenwriters are saying, now you understand what's going on. So
well, let's discuss and that's the distinction where that's the place where you and I don't agree.
Right.
But let's discuss the moment and kind of explore what exactly it means. And whenever Gene Hackman laughs this way, you just go like, oh shit. He says,
well, you seem to have the pulse of the men.
And you could see how suspicious Hunter is.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Thank you, sir.
And Hackman grabs that squawk box.
Mr. Hunter has brought it to my attention that morale may be a bit low. That you may be a bit...
And I love he gives a look to Denzel of like, am I getting this right?
On edge.
On edge.
Because once you're in the middle of the game, he has no choice. He's a serving officer under this guy. He has to go forward.
I think he thinks that Ramsey is going to say something in league with Hunter. And that's why he offers up the on edge thing.
It's totally open to interpretation. My interpretation has always been like, now I have to play this game where you make, basically embarrass me in front of the whole ship. Now we have to do this. Right. Because that's what the choice he's making. But it could be either way.
So I suggest this. Any crew member who feels he can't handle this situation can leave the ship right now. Gentlemen, we're at DEFCON 3. War is imminent.
I think this is horrible. I think it's because the thing is undermining your number one officer is undermining your own authority.
Yes.
I feel he's making exactly the mistake that he was angry with about Hunter questioning his authority during the drill. Is that if you want the unified chain of command to reassure the crew, you just violated that. Right. That's my opinion.
Yeah, he did. And the fact that he makes Hunter a party to this and completely embarrasses him in front of the whole ship. Now, we saw him try to embarrass him, in my opinion, in the officers' meeting there earlier in the dinner they're having. Now this is a more overt embarrassment for him. And and the thing is, you could argue, well, Hunter shouldn't have tried to contradict him when he said they mentioned to have a kick in the ass by saying they should get a pat on the back, because that's essentially essentially Hunter questioning Ramsey's approach to his men, and something that's been tried and true for 25 years of success in Ramsey's career as a captain, right? We can assume that. And so I think Ramsey senses that this is a contradiction. And so he really wants to put Hunter in his place. And clearly Hunter is not getting the message. So now I'm going to up the ante and do it publicly in front of the entire ship and embarrass you and then look at you and challenge you as I've embarrassed you. And then I'm going to walk off with my dog. So it's a brutal dismissal of Hunter's opinion on this situation.
So let me separate two things out. So I'm Team Hunter on this, by the way, both in terms of his treatment of Hunter and whether or not this is a good move in terms of embarrassing your first officer, publicly. And in terms of stylistically, like I'm very aware when I'm not comparing directing a movie to, captaining a nuclear submarine. I'm not saying these are, but I certainly am aware of the mood of the people that are on the set. And I'm generally not a kick in the ass person. I am generally a pat in the back person, like that. So I'm with Hunter on this in general.
Yeah.
But where you and I disagree is not what he did, but why he did it. Is that in your mind, the why is keep Hunter down.
Yep.
Threatened by Hunter, I need to embarrass him. I need to weaken his power. And to me, it all goes back to the scene in The Mess where he says, the true enemy is war itself. Mm-hmm. If you're on a nuclear submarine, the entire purpose is to launch a preemptive strike.
What?
That is the purpose of a nuclear submarine.
No. The entire purpose of a nuclear sub is to be available to launch that, but to not launch irresponsibly.
Of course, we don't want to launch irresponsibly.
It's to provide a safeguard to protect the United States, but it is not to launch the missiles.
Well, it's designed as a weapon of war, as a first strike weapon. They say that in multiple submarine movies that I've watched, but I've read this many places. Its point is to be able to be undetected, get close, and launch its weapons before the other people can launch, like that. And so when you have someone on the ship, the second in command, who has to confirm your orders to launch the weapons, and they say the only enemy can't be destroyed because it is war itself, I am now, as a captain, deeply concerned that this person might not be the person who will be able to follow this order.
Yeah, you and I are just different, because I think it's essential to have someone who is not looking at violence as the answer to the situation, that is someone who is a bit more level-headed and is a bit more able to analyze the situation so we don't make a mistake like launching preemptively like they were going to do.
Hey, I agree with you.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So to me, I like the idea that Hunter is not a person who's just going along with what Ramsey wants.
I'm thrilled, but that has nothing to do with what Ramsey thinks. What I'm saying is that the reason that Ramsey needs to push is not simply because he wants to keep Hunter down because he feels threatened by him, by his ego. It's that he feels that Hunter's reluctance might be in direct opposition to the purpose of the ship.
Yeah. And I disagree. Right. Exactly. Because I think why would you even have a scene where Webs is literally says to Hunter that Ramsey is threatened by your
That's not what he says.
Intelligence?
Oh, he does. You're right. I'll back off. He does. Yeah. He sort of says that.
He says that. Oh, he says it. He says it straight up. This is the problem, and you should just get along. You should just figure out how to speak to him on his terms so that you don't rock, to use that term, you don't rock the boat. Just get along, try to find something to, find a way to just deal with it, because this is the way he is, and he's not changing.
Well,
what he's saying.
What he says about him is that he's a hard ass. And it's so funny too,
by saying,
because I think if you and I were to do a survey of leaders and coaches and teachers and all sorts of throughout film history and how much we like them, that you would, in my opinion, lean much more towards liking the hard asses than I probably would.
Well, I like the hard asses who actually care about the people and don't step on them. So that's the difference there, I think, when I look at this movie, right? Because Mickey's a hard ass. Mickey is absolutely a hard ass in the Rocky series, but he loves Rock, and you can tell that. And Ramsey has no respect for Hunter, in my opinion, and I can see that in every second of this movie.
I think Ramsey as a leader falls into the category, which again is not my style, but he says it multiple times. He talks about horses as dumb as fence posts, but very intuitive. Talks about the little ducks. Talks about how later on he'll talk about, stick a cattle prod up their asses. Yeah, like he is in the school of the hard ass, of what these young men need is a kick in the ass. That kicks in the ass is what keeps a crew running. And it's not my style. I don't agree with it. But there are tons of leaders throughout history who this was their philosophy.
Sure. Yeah, I can't deny that. Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, Nick Saban recently for the Alabama, speaking of the USS Alabama, for the Alabama Crimson Tide in college football, everyone knows he was a hard ass. Belichick, a hard ass and cruel at times, but look at the results, right? And that's what people look at. But people rarely look at the damage those people have done with some of the players or some of the people that have served under them, and some of the emotional and mental health trauma that they've put those people through for years afterwards. So yes, And I think in the 90s, and this is why I think it's an interesting film, because this is 95. We are starting to have much more open conversations about race, about psychology, about psychiatry, about the difference in gender dynamics. There's so much about in racial components of things, racial dynamics as well. We're having a much more open conversation. People forget because it's so rote by now, 30 years later. But in the 90s is when pop culture was starting to have these conversations in the TV shows, in the movies. And this is another example of that with what's going on here, the hard ass versus the much more arguably touchy-feely way of approaching running things. And even nowadays, we have the battles of people who are screaming on social media or the internet about, we need a strong leader who doesn't give a crap what anyone says. And when you say, well, we should care about the fact that we're killing people or that we're involved in the death of a lot of people tacitly or directly or indirectly or directly, and they're called wussies for feeling that way. So it's just all kind of mixed in constantly. The battle will never end between the people who think having a hard ass in certain positions is necessary versus someone who is a little more understanding of how to be the hard ass and be the caring ass, which I think is a good thing,
I like the term the hard ass and the caring ass. I like that. I mean, and to me, it's always that it's all about consequences. Like I totally agree with you is that there are these coaches. Bobby Knight be another one.
Bobby Knight's a perfect example. And that's what he is, in my opinion. Yes.
Right. But the thing is like, to me, there's this slider and saying, and because those coaches, they won games.
Yes.
And
they have players who love them.
Absolutely.
Isaiah Thomas loves Bobby Knight. Yeah.
Well, and this is the thing is that I totally agree with your point is that we don't talk about the consequences of that behavior and how destructive it can be, particularly you think about Bobby Knight and all the walk-ons and bench warmers and other people that were in that brutal situation and didn't have great careers or anything like that, but still got to endure all of that brutality. Yeah. So, but I also think like, to me, it's a slider is that there's levels of hard acidness and there's levels of caring acidness and they each have consequences. Yeah. And I know for me, parts of my failures have been not being enough of a hard ass.
But I also think the other perspective for Steve Moore is parts of your greatest successes are being a caring ass.
Thank you. Well, A, thank you. And B, I agree.
Yeah.
I totally, and I'll tell you something else. This is just personally, because I've thought about this is like, I'd rather fail and be caring, frankly, than be a dick and succeed.
Right.
That's how I feel about things.
Yeah. I'm the same way. That's why I don't like any hard ass coaches. I don't revere any of them. I only like Liverpool recently, Jurgen Klopp, 9 years he was there. He loved his players. And I loved him for that. And so, those are the coaches I gravitate to. Joe Gibbs loved his players. You never saw him being a hard ass, even though he was behind the scenes in certain ways, but he was very caring and loving of his players and respectful and courteous of them. And so there is a way to do it. And so I think with Ramsey, he's just an insecure guy in a lot of ways. And it comes out in these moments and these explosive moments with Hunter. Because Hunter, just by being Hunter, pushes his buttons in so many ways,
The one other difference, and I know we're going very slow, but this has been a very interesting conversation.
Agreed. Is
that the hard-ass coach is the difference between winning and losing games and also the well-beings of the players and people involved.
Yeah.
We're talking about the future of life on Earth and the future of the United States. That's the stakes that Ramsey and Hunter are dealing with.
Yep.
And so, Ramsey, I'm sure, would say a few bruised personalities to save the world is worth it,
Right. And Hunter would say, yes, but that's also what destroys people in the end and could lead to a nuclear war that we never should have had.
I definitely don't want to have
more than bruised egos. It'll cost billions of lives.
Well, this is what makes this a good movie.
I agree, 100%.
Yeah. I do love the last moment where after he makes his speech, Hunter says,
"Very inspiring, sir."
Yeah, that's his little dig at Ramsey, and it's the beginning of his defiance. Like this is the beginning. This is the flashpoint where we start to see Hunter slowly becoming more defiant to Ramsey because he senses that something is off with Ramsey. I'm not saying he's right. I'm just saying that this is where it starts to be a little bit bigger and noticeable by the audience.
And because, of course, we're going to have to ratchet up what's going on now because we get a sonar contact from another sub.
So we have a possible submerged submarine bearing 049, designate Master 28.
And we see all these displays and green lights and things that mean nothing to me, of course, but look really cool.
Lieutenant Mahoney, this is the captain. Increase your speed to standard. Come left to course 270. Make your depth 831 feet. Smartly.
I'm assuming smartly means do this quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
We head up on the bridge and and this is what's so great about this movie is we're not going to just deal with one thing. If we were dealing with just like there's a submarine firing torpedoes at us, that would be plenty exciting for a movie.
Yeah.
But we're not just going to have that because right as we're starting to run from this submarine, we get an EAN.
Con radio receiving emergency action message. Recommend alert 1. Recommend alert 1.
Recommend alert 1.
We hear all the same language, but the language means something different now because first it was a drill, so it meant nothing. Now, the second time, it was for real, so people were nervous about. The third time, everyone knew the next message they got might be the message to launch their missiles.
Yeah.
This is a big deal.
Captain, we have a properly formatted emergency action message from National Command Authority for strategic missile launch, Captain.
I concur, sir. Get the authenticator.
And just pay attention to the actors playing Zimmer and Westergaard.
Yeah.
All they're doing is reading the same authentication numbers.
Yep.
But you can hear from a little hesitation, from a little breath, that they know what the message is and exactly how serious it is.
Bravo, Echo, Echo, Charlie, Alpha, Tango, Alpha.
Bravo, Echo, Echo, Charlie, Alpha, Tango, Alpha.
And that's why casting is so important, Steve, as we talked about many, many times here on the show. And of course, your ex-wife, Karen, being a fantastic casting director, and our conversations about it on episodes with her. You want to do a lot of the extra work, get great actors who will give you so many levels in simple looks, in simple word deliveries, in simple line deliveries. And these two guys absolutely nail it. And so that when they turn, it's almost tragic. You're almost like, oh, these guys, but then you understand they're beginning to get rattled as well. So they're reacting from a place of fear when all the stuff starts to go down.
Well, and the other thing you get to watch is that you can watch Gene Hackman and Denzel Washington, who have already read over the shoulder both the message and they already know the message is authentic.
Yeah.
Because they it's not like it takes that long to read, Bravo, Echo, Echo, Charlie, Alpha, Tango, Alpha. They looked at it and went, oh, they already know it's authentic.
Right.
And the feeling that goes around the room as we hear the repetitions of
Message is authentic, sir.
I concur, sir.
I concur, sir.
Message is authentic.
and then they hand the captain his captain's missile key, and everyone on the bridge knows it's nuclear war.
Yep. And I love the seriousness, right? For all the, in the moment, the battle and the intercom stuff, like once shit goes down, everybody snaps into place. Everybody understands the severity of what's going on. There's no time for petty little issues in this particular scene, which I appreciate.
And you see, to me, what you see is the training, because you see the emotion underneath and that they are still systematically going through the steps necessary.
Yep.
Even though they know what it means. Yep. And we see, Weps, set that clock just the way we saw him before. And so I'll just say, because I'm always curious, whenever we have a running clock, and we have two of them in this movie, both when the missiles, when they're ready to launch, and we also have when the Russian missiles are ready to launch.
Right.
And it is totally impossible, as I mentioned before, to keep this timing absolutely perfect. But they actually do a pretty good job. I did some of the math, and they're not that far off.
I agree
in terms of this timing.
They kind of let you know how much is left in the movie with a few extra minutes added in. So I like that clock keeps in time with the movie itself, the time of the movie itself. I
also like that at this moment, Ramsey leaves Hunter in charge. He has the con while he goes down. So everything is going as it's supposed to go. And he gets these keys out of the safe and gives these are the keys for the missiles, which go to this kid that's going to run down to Weps. That's when this other submarine shows up.
We know that Rodchenko controls at least 4 submarines. This could be one of them. Russian rebels have threatened to launch against our country and are fueling right now. They will have launch capability in 60 minutes.
And this is the other timer that Weps now sets a 60-minute clock because he has plenty of clocks to do all this.
We are rigging for ultra quiet. All hands be ready. This is as real as it gets. We'll presume nothing. Defend ourselves at all cost. that sub so much as comes around or opens up a tube door, we're gonna take her out.
John, is this the origins of the term, "this is as real as it gets"? That has become a cliche. I don't remember it any earlier than this one.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know. But what I love about this scene and what's great about this movie is they show you multiple dimensions of both of these characters of Hunter and Ramsey. And in this moment, again, just like when they're in the briefing, Ramsey is very much on top of things. You understand why 25 years he's been a captain, and you understand why the men follow him. He's very assured, he's very strong in his approach, and he's clear. And he makes it, and he speaks to the men as opposed to being like, anyone else will get off the ship, get the hell off the ship. In this scene, he's delivering lines that are very clear about like, guys, this is real. This is what we trained for. This is what we're trained to do and why we're here. So relax, focus up, and let's get this done. So it's very clear that he's a good captain in these scenes,
I think this shows great leader, the great part of his leadership skills, in particular because he's being very practical.
Yeah.
There's someone right by us who wants to kill us.
Yeah.
But they're not trying to kill us this second. And so I'm going to methodically go through the steps that I need to go to.
Right.
And if they step up, then I'm going to destroy them.
Right.
But I'm not freaking out about it. He's very calm.
Have no concerns. We will take care of it when the time comes. Yeah.
And then again, because we can never have too much tension, they start getting that EAM.
Con, radio, receiving transmission on extremely low frequency receiver, sir.
Very well. Mr. Hunter, go to the radio, please.
And I like to, by the way, just another little detail is that Hunter's down in the radio room and he's calling up to the bridge, and that we have this little video feed, like a security camera between them so they can kind of look at each other. I don't know if this is realistic on the sub, but it's one more little visual thing that they give him to play with.
We got a limited radio transmission indicating an incoming EAM. We need to go shallow to reestablish communications.
So I think Hunter has now made a mistake in the way that he said that. Because you don't say to your captain, we need to go shallow. You can say, I suggest that we go shallow. I recommend we go shallow. But if you say we need to go shallow, that's that sort of language you probably shouldn't use.
Okay.
And he starts to respond, but it's a public thing. So he says,
with that sub still up there, Mr. Hunter, it's my come up the con, Mr. Hunter.
He comes up, goes right up to Ramsey to talk to him, and Ramsey is reading something and ignoring him.
On purpose.
Yes. Well, what's he reading? I don't know the answer, but
I think he's reading something he already knows, he already read.
I think he's specifically checking regulations on what that's what I believe, but I don't have any evidence of it.
Right. And I believe he's reading something he's already read, and he's just sticking his finger up to kind of put him in his place a little bit.
Well,
it's a little power play.
Both could be true.
Sure.
Because
100%.
I think he already knows the regulations that he's reading.
Right.
But our missile system is ready. Mr. Hunter, it is my intention to rise to launch depth, launch our birds, and then get the hell out of there. Not until then. I can't jeopardize the safety of this ship.
Yes, sir. May I suggest that we float the buoy so we have enough cable?
And then I think very petulantly,
yes,
Ramsey says,
very well, float the buoy.
I think he forgot about the buoy.
Oh, probably. Hunter outsmarted him a little bit here in this moment. Yeah, that's a fair point. Totally fair point.
And I think he's embarrassed because he should have remembered the buoy.
Yep.
So they float this radio buoy, and then the winch jams.
Con, sonar, we have a sound short from the buoy winch.
Stop the goddamn winch.
And they get angry, and we're like, oh shit, this is a big deal because there's a hunter killer Russian sub out there, and they just made a shit ton of noise.
And the sub had, I think by this point, had disappeared. They weren't sure where the sub was. And so by indicating or by having something make noise, the sub can now triangulate on them or find them. And so it's like, it's even more unsettling.
And this is my opinion. I'm not saying that this is the truth, but this is, in my opinion, this and the death of the chief, whatever officer who died after the fire are very similar in terms of they are unexpected events that you couldn't have foreseen happening necessarily, that were caused by choices made, but not in a malicious sense. You know what I mean? It's like there was nothing like whether or not you think that Ramsey's choice to run that drill is malicious against Hunter or just his style as a leader. that connection, I don't think he killed that guy. And
No.
I don't think Hunter's choice to use to raise this antenna, I don't think it's his fault that the antenna broke and made a lot of noise.
No.
But the reality is these two really shitty consequences, one happened from Ramsey's choice and one happened from Hunter's choice, you know? And of course, that Akula class Hunter killer did hear them, and torpedoes are fired one after another.
Con sonar, 3,000 yards in closing, sir.
Maneuvering con, cavitate.
Which, by the way, I looked up what cavitate actually means. It's kind of what I thought, which is that they basically spin the screw really, really fast to create vaporizing water molecules that creates bubbles and noise and sound to hopefully freak out the sonar on the torpedoes.
Yep.
And again, I think Ramsey in this sequence is calm and controlled and really an excellent, excellent commander.
Con, radio, receiving emergency action message. Recommend alert 1. Recommend alert 1.
And we're also still, these EAM message thing is coming in, and Ramsey knows that he has to focus on what he has to focus on, which is dealing with his torpedoes. Can't do anything else until you deal with that.
Launch a 5-inch evasion device. Launch your countermeasures.
They close in on the countermeasures. We have one explosion. We have the second explosion very near the ship. Lots of shakes, but they are okay.
Very Star Trek-esque.
Totally Star Trek. Well, that's why there's so much Star Trek I think, in this movie. Unfortunately, in the explosions, we've now lost track of the sub. So we know this other sub is still out there, but we can't see him at this moment. We're trying to find him. And Hunter goes to the radio room because obviously this EAM, whatever we got, this is a really, really big deal.
Yep.
And now we meet one of our other enlisted personnel that's going to become very important, is the much under pressure for the rest of the movie, Vossler.
Yeah, Vossler. And this is played by Lilo Brancato. I hope you guys remember him from Bronx Tale. Remember, he was the son of Robert De Niro in Bronx Tale. He was also in Renaissance Man. He was also in The Sopranos, if you guys remember that. And he's a guy who endured a lot of things in his life. There were some issues with crime. He went to jail for a while. He had a 10-year sentence for a 2005 burglary, which resulted in the death of an off-duty police officer. He was addicted to drugs and kicked that eventually. And so when he got out, he wrote a book about his experiences on all of this. So a really good actor, just that unfortunately got kind of sidetracked with substance abuse and situations he shouldn't have been a part of, unfortunately. But he's great in the film. He really is great in the film.
Wow, I knew none of that. And he's in Sonar. We see Vossler, who's now bleeding because of something that happened in the action. And he hands him the paper.
That's it? It's incomplete, sir. We lost it when the radio buoy cable got severed.
And all we see is subject, nuclear missile launch. Don't even finish the word.
What do you think?
I think there's nothing on this.
Yes, sir. It got cut off during the attack.
Then it's meaningless.
Sir, this is an EAM pertaining to nuclear missile launch.
No, Mr. Hunter. That's a message fragment.
So from what I have read, and like I said, I was on this Reddit thread reading a lot from submariners and their opinions. They said two things that I found contradictory.
Okay.
And they're all about what's about to happen next. One is they very clearly said that what Ramsey says is true. A partial, unconfirmed order is in the rule book, should not be treated as any kind of order at all.
Yep.
It is meaningless. It is nothing. And so that standard procedure is you go forward with the orders you have in hand. So right now their orders are 100% still go to the regular, whatever the depth is, and launch your missiles.
Yep.
That's the orders that they have. They also said there is absolutely no way that what happens after in this movie of a captain trying to remove their XO, they're like, that would never happen. The moment the XO says, I do not concur, they would not launch their missiles. And they also said there's absolutely no reason not to launch the missiles because the orders in hand are what you're supposed to go with. And so I'm reading through this thread and I didn't feel like I got the actual, there's not an answer here.
There's not, which is why the film is great, because there is no answer. And, even later Cobb says it like, it's just as possible that you're wrong and Ramsey is right. The captain is right. So that's what's great about the movie is it all depends on which opinion you have about the situation, which guy you side with, right? Because a lot of people side with Ramsey, a lot of people side with Hunter. You should wait to get the full communication because you're about to launch nuclear weapons. They're going to kill possibly billions of people. And then on Ramsey's side, well, if you don't act now, more Americans are going to die than Russians and could lose the war completely including possibly people's family members who are on the ship that are serving. So there's a lot, and that's what's great about the movie. It really is this incomplete message. How do you interpret the incomplete message, and what is your responsibility to finding out what this incomplete message says? It's irregardless that Hunter ends up being right at the end of the movie.
Exactly.
Because what's important is the fact that both of them are very clear about what they think should be happening here. And this begins the battle for power of the ship.
Well, and this is the thing that I think is so important, is that we find out that Hunter is right at the end.
Right.
That should have no effect. Look, everybody gets to watch the movie however they want. I'm not telling you how to watch the movie. But if I were to tell you how to watch the movie, I would say that the fact that Hunter is right should have zero effect on how you interpret their behavior up until the moment that we find out that Hunter is right.
Right. You should, the first time you watch the movie, you should know. Well, should is so difficult. I feel like you should have, well, I'm going to say should, but I feel like you should have your beliefs throughout the movie very clear for yourself about who's right or who's wrong. The fact that you end up being right or wrong at the end of the movie is irrelevant. As you just said, Steve, it's correct. Like, you should have your idea about it. And because he's right, you shouldn't all of a sudden go, well, I was wrong. He just happened to be right. And as I said, Cobb said earlier, Ramsey could have been right, and Denzel essentially, or Hunter rather, essentially condemned way more Americans to die than would have.
Yeah, so that's the movie to me to imagine. Is okay, we're in a movie where there was no nuclear war, and we're really, really happy, and thank God Hunter did what he did because he saved the world.
Right.
Great. That's what the movie is.
Right.
Now imagine a movie where because of Hunter, they didn't launch their missiles in time, and Roshenko did launch and destroyed Tokyo, New York, and Washington, D.C., killing millions of people. And then, and that's what happened. Right. You know, now how do you feel about everything that everybody's doing in the course of the movie?
By the definition of the military, Ramsey is right to go forward and go on with the launch. I'm not going to contradict anyone on that. He has every right. And it would have been a defensible right if they had lived through this whole war and his actions were brought up in front of a tribunal for what he did. He would have been 100% right to have stayed according to the military edicts, to have done and carried out the orders the way he wanted to. It's only because he has an XO that's willing to question his orders that this launch is averted, right? Because I don't think Zimmer would have questioned him one bit and launched. Clearly.
I agree. I don't think there's anyone else on this ship, as far as I can tell, that would have questioned him.
Probably not.
Under these circumstances.
Yeah, Cobb wasn't going to question him. Cobb was going along with it. Yeah.
No. Well, I mean, Cobb only does what he does, which we're about to get to, because it is within the chain of command and what the rules are supposed to say. He's following the rules too. Yep. I do want to highlight just one thing you said, which is that you said what Ramsey wants to do. I don't think, in my opinion, Ramsey wants to launch nuclear weapons. That is the last thing he wants to do. He believes it's his duty to do it, but I don't think he wants to do it.
Yeah, I guess we'll just have to disagree on that. Yeah, I think he does. There's something, again, power mad, in my opinion, power hungry. But again, I respect your interpretation and your view of it. I think he's so desperate to launch them for his own reasons, and we don't really know what those reasons are as the film goes along. And there's been a lot to make us question his intentions and his reasons, in my opinion, as I view the movie before these moments. And the fact that he becomes so obsessed with launching these nuclear weapons makes me question the authenticity of his feelings and following orders, so to speak.
See that, and again, that goes to how different the movie you're watching is.
Yeah.
If this is a guy who actually wants nuclear war, like, this guy's a monster. I mean, that's so if you're seeing a movie about a heroic hunter, the executive officer brought onto the ship of a megalomaniacal monster ready to destroy the world.
Yeah.
That is entirely different from the movie that I'm watching about two people. For me, his motivation is, I have trained my life to do a very difficult thing, and I'm going to do this job correctly, following the orders and the rules. And if that orders leads me to do something terrible, like launching a nuclear war, which I do not want to do, I will follow those orders and do them. And Hunter is quietly and calmly trying to talk to him, and I love just the blocking of the whole thing, that he keeps moving away from him and dismissing. I don't know if you ever had this acting exercise. I used to do this with actors a lot of when I felt like they weren't quite getting the scene. I was like, okay, never look this person in the eye and always walk away from them when they try to talk to you. And then tell the other person, you have to catch them. You have to get them to look you in the eye to explain this to you. Yeah. And suddenly the energy in the scene just comes way up because you've given them this physical thing.
Right.
It's totally what's happening in this scene.
No one likes to be ignored. And so it increases the intensity of the interactions. Yeah, for sure.
I love the moment where Denzel's softest of voices, and he says,
all I'm asking for is the time we need to get back online.
Calm down, Mr. Hunter.
I am calm.
You don't appear to be calm.
Is he calm?
He's very calm. He's gaslighting him. In my opinion, Ramsey is gaslighting him by saying, oh, you're the emotional one, and it's like, no, I am calm. I'm trying to tell you what the hell's going on here, and you're not listening.
I think given the circumstances, he is exceptionally calm and calmer than Ramsey is.
Yes, 100%. We're about to find out.
You know as well as I do that any launch order received without authentication is no order at all. That's our number one rule. That rule is the basis for the scenario we've trained on time and time again.
Yes, sir.
It's a rule we follow without exception.
And again, he walks away, forcing Denzel to chase him. And this is where, regardless of our differences in opinions about Ramsey, where I totally agree with you, is the statement, I don't want save asses or kiss asses. That is bullshit.
Yep, 100%.
He's demonstrated no ability to listen to other opinions in the course of this film, really.
Yeah.
Mr. Hunter, we have rules that are not open to interpretation, personal intuition, gut feelings, hairs on the back of your neck, little devils or angels sitting on your shoulders.
Captain.
And now he escalates. And Gene Hackman's such a fucking good actor.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, he's fucking great.
We're all very well aware what our orders are and what those orders mean.
Just want to focus on that line because I think that's the thing underneath all of this. We're all walking around with millions of deaths, the end of the world. That's how big this is.
Mr. Hunter, I've made a decision. I'm captain of this boat. Now shut the fuck up!
And he loses it.
Yep.
Has he ever lost it this way in front of the crew?
Probably. Quite a few times, I would imagine, to anyone who decided to... Remember, he's been through 8 XOs. Anyone who decided to counter him or anyone who decided to... Because he has no problem being the one who embarrasses you in public. But God forbid you embarrass him in public. He will lose his temper, as he does here. And the last person I want in charge of a nuclear submarine is someone who acts like a 10-year-old when you've taken away his toy from him because he doesn't like the fact that someone has a different opinion than him and is just ardent about his opinion as much as he is ardent about his and explodes like this. That's the last person who should be in charge of nuclear weapons.
Remember the moment in Patton where Patton lays into a bunch of people and then his right-hand man guy comes up to him and says, sometimes they don't know when you're acting. And he says, it's not important that they know. It's only important that I know.
Right.
So first of all, I think that Captain Ramsey loves the film Patton.
Yeah, I'm sure he watches it religiously on the show. He's probably made them watch it on some steel wall on the sub there, probably. Yeah.
Second of all, I think he's raised his voice or sounded angry dozens of times with various people, and I think it's almost always been an act. I think that he puts on a show, just as he was putting on a show at the beginning of the movie. To me, again, this is all my interpretation. If you watch Cobb's expression, he is shocked at this moment that he loses it. I think the way that Ramsey loses it at this moment is totally unlike anything that he has ever done before. And in my opinion, again, all of this is my opinion, is that I think it's weighing. I mean, this is a huge fucking thing. And I think that the stress of this moment is weighing on him and he loses it, which he totally does. That's my opinion.
In my opinion is here is a young, smarter guy than him. He's already been feeling insecure the whole time. He's been unable to control him and step on him no matter what he's tried to do. He still steps up to him. And so now, out of frustration and anger, and also, you're right, Steve, all the other pressures that are going on for him in this moment, he unleashes this disrespectful response to a senior, or to an officer, rather, not a senior officer to him, but certainly a senior officer to the men. And it's extremely disrespectful. And he could be, it could be, never mind. I don't know what you would do there in that situation because I never served in the Navy, but I imagine you could bring someone up on charges for that kind of response to someone, especially because both men should be respected by the men. And he's the one that constantly pulls Hunter aside whenever he has to dress Hunter down, and then embarrasses him in public when he feels like it. So it's just these games that he's been playing with Hunter the whole time.
The one other thing about this moment is I think Ramsey knows that he lost it.
Yes.
And knows that it was public, and you see him feel all that.
Yep. He isn't an unfeeling man. I just think for me, I see a man who is losing control and senses possibly, and I'm adding this, that his time is ending. His time of doing things is almost over. And his time is ending in control of these kinds of ships. And he's old now. And so you see, to me, I sense that throughout the whole film. Here's this young buck who thinks he can step to me. And what happens with old men like that is they forget that they were once the young buck who knew and thought they knew better and wanted their opportunity to show what they can do. And I think we sometimes forget that as we get older,
And Ramsey gives an order on the mic, which has to be repeated.
Weapons, con.
Ship targeting to target package SLBM 64741/2.
This is the captain.
And we've established this as a pattern multiple times.
Yeah.
He says this is the captain, and then the next order needs to be repeated by the XO.
Right. That's the military protocol. Yeah, exactly.
And there's the pause, and Hunter says, in the most strong, composed way, I think,
Captain, I cannot concur.
Repeat my command.
Sir, we don't know what this message means. Our target package could have changed.
You repeat this order, or I'll find somebody who will.
There's the line, John.
Yeah. That's a strong statement, right? I mean, and we're seeing Denzel going full Denzel here, Steve, which I think is great. That kind of quiet defiance in what we saw the shades of that in Glory as well, those quiet, defiant moments. And so to see it come up here in this moment, I think is great. But I think you can make a case that like he is trying to take command of the ship in a way by not de-escalating the situation, right? He should be de-escalating here. And now in a way, he is starting to up his defiance, which is going to lead to this explosion coming here in just a second.
Well, this is really the crux of the whole thing because, what we're really talking about is following orders. What is the proper procedure? And in the captain's mind, the proper procedure is I say an order and you repeat it.
Yeah.
That's what we've established.
Yep.
But there's another procedure, which is that the XO has the right to question the captain's, what the situation is. And he is following that procedure. And the one thing I will say that is entirely out of any of these procedures is the captain saying, you repeat this order or I'll find somebody who will.
Yeah. That's violating the protocol, right? Because that's essentially saying, I'm going to demote you or remove you from your position because you're not agreeing with me and doing what I think should be done here. And so, I don't think Ramsey is 100% wrong in certain moments in this scene. But I do think that, I do think also that Hunter doesn't do better to de-escalate the situation in how it's going down. He's doing his best, but I think there's another way to approach this. And he's immediately defiant as soon as he won't repeat the order.
Well, the next line is definitely defiant.
Hell no, you won't, sir.
Yeah, I love that.
And then immediately, Ramsey just removes him from his position.
Cobb, remove Mr. Hunter from the control room. Get Lieutenant Zimmer in here right now.
No, sir, I do not concur, and I do not recognize your authority to relieve me under command under Navy regulations.
Now, the whole point of this is, it sounds stupid to say, but launching nuclear weapons is a really, really big deal.
Yeah.
Like if the captain wanted to order someone to, clean out the head, he doesn't need someone else to repeat his command.
Right.
But when you're talking about potentially ending the life on Earth, you got to have two people. And the idea that he could just, if someone doesn't give him the answer he wants, replace them until he finds someone he does is absolutely 100% completely wrong.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. And Hunter knows it, which is why he's like, I don't recognize your authority. That's a massive thing to say. I don't recognize your authority to replace me or to demote me or to remove me from my position. So it becomes a shouting match, right? And this is the thing that I think maybe I haven't been too fair on when you look at this movie. This is a contest of wills between two very strong-willed alpha guys. Alphas in different ways, if we use that term loosely. I know we debated on this months ago. But like the fact that Gene Hackman's very clear about what should happen here, Ramsey. And Hunter is very clear about what should happen here, yet neither one are finding the common ground between them.
No disagreement on the use of the term alpha here. That's what it's for. I mean, these are two guys who want to lead men into combat. They absolutely are positioning themselves to be those kinds of people. And first of all, by the way, on the Blu-ray disc, there is just the shortest of clips of Hackman and Washington rehearsing this scene.
Oh.
So they're just in, street clothes, and you could see what's so great about it. And this is going to sound weird. What's so great about this tiny, tiny clip is there's nothing great about it. And what I mean by that is that it's like, oh, these are just actors rehearsing. This is what actors,
right.
They're kind of walking through it. They're stumbling a little bit. They they have the scripts in their hands. They're kind of, you do the thing where you're like, well, maybe if I move over here, maybe if I do this, and they haven't figured it out. They're not delivering amazing performances. And I just went, man, what I wouldn't give to see Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman rehearse for 2 hours.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you imagine what you learn?
Yeah, and find the scene as they're rehearsing.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
And get surprised by each other.
Yes.
And I remember this is a story Ethan Hawke told on Mark Maron's show, which is that he said when he had to go do training day, he went into literal training. He watched old Denzel Washington movies like he was watching game film because he knew he had to go up against this guy. Yeah. And he wanted to be prepared. And the reason I bring it up is like, you could say exactly the same thing about Gene Hackman, that you better be on your best game to go in. And therefore to see these two guys have to face each other. Oh my God.
That's the circle of life as an actor.
Totally.
Denzel was Ethan Hawke in this movie, right?
Yep.
And so, yeah.
And I love when Hunter just clearly is quoting chapter and verse from the regulations.
We cannot launch our missiles unless both you and I agree.
What are you waiting for?
Sir. This is expressly why your command must be repeated. It requires my assent. I do not give it. And furthermore, you continue upon this course and insist upon this launch without confirming this message first. I will be
Chief of the boat,
backed by the rules of precedence,
Captain Commanding Officer of the USS Alabama.
Regulations
I order you to place the XO under arrest on the charge of Navy regulations.
You know what this is like? It's like, is it confrontation in Les Mis between Javert and Jean Valjean?
Yeah, right.
You could listen to both Hackman completely and not listen to Washington, and you could listen to Washington and not listen to Hackman and be completely enthralled by everything they're saying at the top of their powers.
Now I have Crimson Tide, the musical, in my mind.
Dude.
I absolutely see that. Each one has a solo moment and come together for this battle. As they go back and forth.
Honestly, all the repetition of orders going back and forth would work well for the chorus. Yeah. Like
somebody get Jason Robert Brown on this right now, for God's sake.
Dude, Crimson Tide the musical. It's all in one location. I mean, this actually would really work.
I'm just saying it would really work. You'd have to create the stage that would work with separate areas of the sub. But it would absolutely be fantastic.
So you know how one of the biggest innovations in Broadway theater in the last 40 years is the rotating platform, that you did for Les Mis and all these other. You put the whole set on a gimbal.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's tilting. Oh my God, it would be amazing.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. You can even do the effect where they're sitting off, on the stage but not in the scene. And then jump up into the scene on the gimbal and move around. Like there are so many ways you can mess with it to make it work. And look, everyone in Broadway will tell you it's not going to work, and then it comes out, it'll be a smash success. Who thought Titanic the musical would be a damn success? So
I'm sold. I've already bought my ticket for opening night. I'm ready to be there. But this is all coming to a head in our beautiful duet. And really, the central person in this whole scene isn't Hunter or Ramsey. It's Cobb.
Yeah, it's Cobb, who is watching intently. And listen, by the way, this is not the way you do things in front of the men. It's just not.
Nope.
And of course, later, Jason Robards calls them out for that at the end of the movie. But it is not the way you're supposed to behave. And I get where each of them are coming from. And it's almost like mommy and daddy fighting. You're in the middle of it and you're catching it right. And so Cobb is just you can see Cobb is... he's not a man who shows his emotions throughout the movie, but you can tell in that moment he's not sure what to do as this is exploding right in front of them, and they've got a nuclear sub on their ass.
I mean, saying mommy and daddy are fighting, I mean, it's exactly what it is. And frankly, I don't know if I'll put this in, but Karen and I, in our divorce, the thing that we have worked hardest on is to never fight in front of our son.
Right. That's amazing. Most couples do not have that parameter within them.
Karen is an awesome human being, and I hope that I am too. And it is hard. So
I'm sure.
it is. And to be really clear, we established real well how much Cobb loves Captain Ramsey.
Yes, right from the beginning.
It is critical, and how much Captain Ramsey loves Cobb.
Yes,
this is his go-to guy. I mean, this is it's the non-commissioned officer to the officer. This is the person he trusts. This is the guy who runs the ship.
Right.
Chief of the boat.
Which is why later, when they get back in power, Ramsey looks at him when he goes with Hunter and says, "You of all people," just like you can tell that's a stark betrayal. So both sides get betrayals here.
Exactly.
Web's going with Hunter. So yeah, or Web's going against Hunter. Yeah.
I say again, I order you to place the XO under arrest on the charge of mutiny.
And he just pleads with him.
Captain, please, the XO is right. We can't launch unless he concurs.
And I think Ramsey's totally losing it at this point.
Yes, 100%.
To the USS Alabama. Rebel-controlled missiles being fueled. Immediately launch 10 Trident missile sorties. They're fueling their missiles! We don't have time to fuck around!
The use of the F word by Hackman is amazing in this movie.
Yeah.
Shut the fuck up. And we're not trying to fuck around. Like, yeah, all of that is so. But it does show you a man who was used to being in charge and never questioned, who is rattled at being questioned in this moment. And he's probably embarrassed, Steve. Again, I don't think I've been fair as we've been talking about. I'm realizing as we record this and talk about the movie, maybe I haven't been fair enough to Hunter, or to Ramsey rather, and certainly I was trying to be at the beginning of this particular episode, but maybe I haven't been fair enough. And so you look at the situation. This is an old man who's used to being in charge and he's been good at what he does. And now he's realizing that the things that worked for him in the past don't work anymore. That his judgment is being questioned, which is something he's probably never experienced. And it's being done in a public way. So as human beings, there is a natural sense of pushing back and getting defensive and, wanting to establish yourself. And then he goes to his friend, I would imagine probably his best friend on the ship, Cobb, and says, "Cobb, get him out of here. Get him out of my sight. Break the rules. I want him gone." And Cobb won't do it, which makes it even more of a thing of feeling powerless or starting to sense that you might be a little more powerless than you thought.
I mean, obviously, we see this guy differently, but like the with the way that I see him, he has thought for decades about this moment of like, how will he command his men into the most difficult decisions there are. Right. And I personally think, because I know so many people like this who will say like, "Oh, I'm great at taking criticism," or "I always listen to other people's opinions," but they don't.
No.
And he thinks that he does. And I think it's just what you just said, which is that he is not used to people. He says you can question me, but nobody ever does.
Right.
And he's not used to it. And I think he is embarrassed and he is freaking out and he is worrying that he's not handling this the way that he should.
Right.
At this moment, that's the most important, literally the most important moment of his life.
Yeah. 100%.
Sir, I think you need time to think this over.
I don't have to think this over.
He does not sound stable.
No.
At this moment.
Not at all.
Captain, I relieve you of your command of this ship. Cobb, escort the captain to his stateroom. I'm assuming command.
You're not assuming anything.
And again, it's Denzel Washington. It's just as you said, this is the beginning of his power.
Oh, yeah.
Chief of the boat, Captain Ramsey's under arrest. Lock him in his stateroom.
Captain, please.
Now, Cobb!
It is powerful.
It is. And, you look at it and you go, well, is there a better way he could have handled this? Yes, he could have kept pleading with the captain to understand where he was coming from. But the captain was now threatening his position, his power on the ship. And Hunter, a young guy, a guy who wants to, kind of show that he can handle the thing, he steps forward and takes probably one of the most unprecedented moves ever in the Navy, in the history of the Navy, and says, remove this man from power. I am now usurping his power and becoming the voice of power on the ship, and gets his friend, Cobb, Ramsey's friend, Cobb, to arrest him and remove him from command, which is an insane move. And I bet people in the theater, I remember being like, "Oh my God," when I saw this the first time. And I imagine a lot of people felt that way too.
Well, and even though a moment ago I did say that I think Ramsey has lost his cool, like he is, he is not 100% being rational. In this next moment, you see what makes this guy a great leader is he looks around, he assesses the situation, he realizes the reality, and very calmly. And by the way, there is a look to Cobb.
Yes.
Of betrayal and hurt. But he takes off that captain's missile key, goes up to Hunter, hands him the key because he understands the situation and says,
"You're way out of your league, Hunter. You're not ready to make tough decisions yet."
Great. This is a great line, Steve, right? As you said, you've known people like this in life. We've seen this, right? We've seen this in movies, right? The idea of people, older people who have been in charge for a long time, a young person coming up, and you think they're not ready. And they don't remember when they were young and they were ready, but they needed the opportunity to show it. And in this moment, because Ramsey has his opinions on Hunter and Hunter's experience, he thinks that Hunter is not ready to do the things that he's doing. And so it's an interesting moment. And it's almost like a challenge. You're not ready to make these kinds of decisions yet, you know?
I also think it's a bit of leadership because he's saying this requires tough decisions.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, tough decisions, we're going to see one in a moment with Hunter. Those are tough decisions. And this is, I'm not making a comparison, but having witnessed young leaders suddenly be put in a leadership position, because I taught film school for many years.
Yeah.
Nobody knows if they're ready until they're put in the situation.
Right.
And I'm talking about leaders put in the situation of leading 4 people on a tiny little student film shoot and having to decide which lamp to use. And they panic and don't know what to do. Yeah. So many people look at leadership things and they go, like, they look at how someone screwed up and they go, oh, it's so obvious now with 2020 hindsight, you just do that. And then you put them in a situation where they have to make tough decisions on very limited information, which is what a lot of leadership is.
Yeah. I think
it's a lot tougher.
I think sports is the same way, right?
Totally.
Like you get a quarterback coming out of college and that quarterback looks in command of his offense. He's been amazing for 4 years or 3 years, whatever long it is. And then you thrust them into the NFL and you think they're going to be ready. And a lot of them aren't. A lot of them fall apart. And the ones that were backups or maybe not that strong in college all of a sudden become these very strong NFL quarterbacks because they can step up. So you just never know.
Well, and from everything I've heard, and you're the sports person, not me, but game day speed is a completely different thing from what they've been practicing.
Oh, you know? 100%.
Anybody here disagrees with what I've done? And you feel free to relieve yourself of duty now.
And nobody answers. But I think if you look around at each of those faces, they all are saying different stuff.
Well, it's a shock moment, right? Like people, shocked isn't just being like having your house robbed or, you know, being in a car accident. It's witnessing an event that you didn't anticipate that escalates your emotion. Yeah. So you're just sitting there in shock because these guys probably don't know what to do in a moment like this because this is not what you trained for in the military. Now we're going to replace your commander. How are you going to react? You know, so the fact that they have the faces that they do is an interesting moment. And certainly later when Ramsey takes the ship back over, you'll see how many of them weren't comfortable with him being removed from power as well. So it's an interesting moment. Look around, but it's very similar, Steve, to what he said earlier. Ramsey, when he said on the mic, right? He said, if anyone can't handle what we're doing, you can get off the ship.
Yep.
And Hunter, in a way, is saying the same version. If any of you guys have an issue with me taking over, y'all can leave your duty stations right now. I'll get someone to replace you. So, yeah.
Well, totally. And I also think it relates to calling for a missile drill in the middle of a fire.
Right.
Because what Ramsey's point is when we're going to have to make the most important, difficult decisions is going to be in the worst conditions. It's not going to be at a time where we can calmly contemplate it. It's going to be at a time when it's really hard. And the other thing, and I just want to stress this over and over again, there's no right answer here.
No, you're right. There's no right answer.
Based on the information we have, there isn't. You're going to take a shot, and that shot could be wrong.
Our analysis is looking at the behavior of these characters, right?
Right.
But you're 100% right. Like both of them are valid in doing what they're doing according to the orders, right? And so, and their conscience, and that's the two different things when the differences of opinion when you look at it here.
Next, he's going to get on the 1MC and make his announcement to the ship that he's relieved the captain. And now it's so funny that I haven't talked about editing very much in the 9 years of the podcast. And now I have so much to say about it. But it's when you're doing the speech, obviously, midst of the speech, you need to cut to reactions.
Right.
Because this is the first time the crew's hearing it. who is the most important reaction to cut to first? It's Webs.
Webs, yeah.
Because he is the center of the movie. That's why we cut to him first.
Right.
I don't mean the center of the movie in terms of the story, but in terms of what has to happen, whether we're going to launch the weapons, he's at the center of that.
Whether they're going to go along with the mutiny, he's at the center of it all when Ramsey wants to take back control from Hunter, yeah.
And of course, who are the next people that we want to check in with as he's explaining what he's going to do and how he's going to check the veracity of the message while retaining his readiness? Well, we want to check with the other officers, Westergaard, Zimmer, and of course, Doherty, James Gandolfini, is a key character because we already have a feeling about that guy.
Yeah. And all of them don't seem to be happy about this situation. Yeah.
No, of course not. Well, and then you cut to the poor guys who had to actually put Captain Ramsey in his quarters.
What the hell are we doing, Fred?
I don't know about you, but I'm pissing my pants.
It's a great scene that I think is so essential to the moment to show what the men are thinking, not just the officers, which is great.
Yeah, it is so out of their league what's going on, and they're so not in control of anything, you know. And then we go into the quarters where Ramsey has sat down, called the dog up to his lap, and I think now he has regrouped.
Yes.
And now he is calmly, as any military person would do, reassessing the situation. And the first step is he checks out Hunter's file again.
Yeah. There's two ways to read this, I think, in my opinion, two ways. One, he's checking out Hunter's file because Hunter is now in command of the boat. Can he really do what needs to happen? I need to know for sure. I need to look at this file again. Maybe I missed something. Maybe there's something I can have some hope for. Or the other way to look at it is, what are his weaknesses? Because I'm already thinking about how to retake this ship back in control because it's too dangerous of a situation to let him be in control of the ship with a nuclear sub near us and war happening, possibly happening.
Yeah, I think it's all of that, definitely. Mm-hmm. And then we have this surprising and really great private moment with Cobb and Hunter.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cobb. Thank you. Fuck you.
He should not have done that. But that shows a young leader. A young leader does not need to verify their opinions with someone who is doing their job. You just let it be, keep it still, do the job, you know. But a young man, he's almost seeking a little bit of a little bit of acceptance from Cobb for Cobb having done what he did. And Cobb, rightfully, and he should not be cussing back at the XO, aka captain of the ship at this point. But he does it to make it very clear that, you know, he's a man who follows orders and respects the order of things. It was not a personal decision of choosing sides, which I think is really important because later he does choose a side.
Get it straight, Mr. Hunter. I'm not on your side. Now, you could be wrong, but wrong or right, the captain can't just replace you at will. That was completely improper, and that's why I did what I did. By the book.
Cobb is probably the most, how can you say this? The purest character in the whole film because he follows the orders, the letter of the law, and how things should go point by point.
Exactly. Well, and what was Ramsey modeling over and over again to his men and to his officers is you follow orders.
Follow orders.
Yes, sir. Drop that fucker twice. Like that is exactly what Cobb did.
Yep.
Is Cobb followed the correct chain of command against his captain, and that is because Ramsey couldn't see the misalignment between the rules and whatever the fuck he wanted.
Right.
You know?
Right. The protocol. He followed the protocol. Exactly.
I thank you anyway.
So now he calls down to the radio because obviously we need that back online to get the EAM, and Zimmer is there, you know, speaking to him correctly as an officer, but obviously there's a lot going on, and this is also where we see Vossler desperately trying to fix a lot of fried boards.
Yeah.
And then in the midst of this, because this movie over and over and over again is never going to give you a moment's rest.
Come on, Soda! Holy shit, sir! He's right on top of us!
And then we have what is obviously movie exposition about launching torpedoes, but we're being too close and they need time to arm and all of that stuff that we have to make sure the audience understands in terms of how this is going to work.
Yeah, and that's a conceit they do because there is nobody serving on the ship who doesn't, especially down there, who doesn't understand how long it takes missiles to arm and how far away you need to be away. But they use one of these young kids to ask these questions, standing in for the audience, which it sucks because that would not be how it went down. But you understand this is a movie and you've got to address certain things for an audience that has never served on a ship.
It's literally the same thing as everybody who reads comic books knows.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Exactly.
everybody who's on
Yeah.
a submarine knows that these torpedoes. But what's so great about it is we literally just had, you're not ready to make the tough decisions.
Mhm.
We literally just had Captain Ramsey brilliantly captaining the submarine against two torpedoes that have been launched. And now we suddenly put Hunter in the exact same position where he has to calmly and in a slightly different way protect the submarine from these two torpedoes that are in the water.
Yeah.
All ahead flank. Chief of the watch to maneuvering. Give me max speed now.
I won't go into the details of the distances and the countermeasures and the cavitation and all that other stuff. But not only do we manage to not get destroyed by those torpedoes, but once we did get that 1,000, yards or whatever that we needed to get of distance, we did fire at the Aquila and they hit. And it's a really cool, by the way, underwater explosion and then implosion as the submarine is destroyed.
Yeah.
And just so you know, and I'm pretty sure this is exactly what was done with Hunt for Red October, is most of this, all the model work and the effect stuff is not shot underwater. It is shot in air with smoke and mist to create the illusion of water. So all of these things where you see sub passes and submarines and all that stuff, that's shot not underwater.
Right.
But this explosion is in fact shot underwater. And that's how you get that great effect of the implosion and all that stuff going on.
Wow.
I love too that this whole time Captain Ramsey is sitting in his quarters, feeling the maneuvers and hearing the orders going around and can do nothing to protect his submarine.
Yeah.
And Hunter succeeds, just even more so than Ramsey, because not only does he protect the sub, but he actually destroys the Hunter killer and gets rid of him.
And you think as an audience that the film is telling you in this moment, Hunter was right to do what he did. And now he's taken out the Russian sub. He's gone one step further than Ramsey by taking out the sub. And so there's momentary celebrations on the ship that they've survived this encounter. However,
Con, sonar, incoming torpedo! They must have got one off before they got hit, sir!
Right full rudder, launch target countermeasure.
Again, same thing. We do countermeasures, right full rudder, except this is going to be really close. And we are diving. And you can really see how big this set is on the gimbal. Like this is a massive, I would have loved to see this thing built. Huge multi-story set that you can turn and twist and lean in all these different directions. It's so cool. And again, we cut back, and it's such an important cut, to Ramsey with his little dog as the lights are going off and everything is shaking.
Yeah.
Experiencing this because that torpedo hits right next to the submarine.
And it's important to watch Ramsey in these scenes, right, Steve? Because he is not showing any kind of, he's not rattled. He's not emotional. Nope. He's just observing what is happening. Why? Because he has been in war. He's been in battle. He knows how to keep his cool in any situation. And so it's important to understand that that's why we're seeing his scenes at this time through all this critical stuff, is you're seeing a guy who is very calm under pressure. Except for, of course, what happened there with Hunter earlier. But in a war situation, he's very calm under pressure and just figuring out what's happening.
It's so funny. You know what I always think about in this kind of thing is the AA serenity prayer, which is, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah.
I think to be a commanding officer in a war zone, it is necessary to be able to let go of those things you can't control.
Yeah. Yeah.
He is at this moment locked in a room.
Yep.
So he can't do anything about that.
Right.
We've survived the explosion, but there's major damage. We're down in the bilge bay where there's flooding. I think this is all handled. It's really scary.
Yeah.
And we see this guy who's got the biggest wrench in the world, that he's trying to close this thing to stop the flooding. Because I'm 1,000 feet underwater in a submarine. Yeah. Flooding seems bad. And then the maneuvering goes out.
Con, maneuvering! We've lost propulsion, sir! Chief of the boat, how we doing?
Sir, we are going down. I need propulsion.
Forward ballast tanks are damaged, sir.
And when the maneuvering goes out, the sub, which was already diving, just starts sinking.
Passing 1,500 feet. At 1850, it's all over.
So they're 350 feet from now, everyone dies. This whole sequence is so well done.
Yeah, agreed. From like celebration to terror within seconds. Yeah.
Yeah. And the helplessness of the whole thing for most of the crew.
Yep.
Like, so you have the guys in the bilge bay and the guys working on propulsion, and they're desperately doing everything they can.
Yeah.
And then you have a lot of other people that can feel them sinking,
Yeah.
and they can't do anything. They got the flooding stopped in the bilge bay briefly, and then it starts again. There's an officer on the deck above the hatch into the bilge bay reporting up to Hunter.
Tom, bilge bay! Flooding has recommenced! It looks like 3 men are trapped!
Bilge Bay Con, try and get those men out of there as soon as you can and seal that bay.
Sir, if we don't seal the bilge bay now, we'll lose the ship.
Here it is, man.
Yeah.
You're not ready to make the tough decisions. We're here.
Right off the bat, as soon as he takes control, he's got to avert a Russian submarine with missiles launching. And then now he's got to deal with the ship sinking. And now he's got to deal with the fact that he's got to command Hellerman, of course, played by Ricky Schroeder, to Silver Spoon's fame. You know, if you guys remember Ricky Schroeder and NYPD Blue, he's got to command him to essentially seal these guys off to their certain deaths in the bilge bay, which is an incredible sequence.
And it's this to me is such a Star Trek moment.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know?
100%. Yes.
And you see, because Cobb said it has to happen now.
Yeah.
And he's yelling down into these guys who are desperately trying to stop the flooding to save the ship.
Yeah.
And we see this guy who's been pushing on this wrench, and we see it break basically and hit him in the face.
Yep.
And there's blood, and just seeing the unconscious, probably dead body floating in the bloody mess as the water is rising. It is one of the most disturbing images I can think of, this moment.
Yeah, and what I love about this moment, not that the man dies, it's that the two other guys who could be scrambling to climb out of there and leave him behind are trying to bring him back up to the surface to get some air and see if he's okay. Never leave a man behind, no matter where you serve.
Yep.
It's a beautiful moment. And I love that they didn't have him just like stepping over his body to try to run out of there in desperation. They understand. When you serve, especially in a theater of war, especially on a ship that is designed to be an instrument of war, you understand that at any moment you could die. And that's part of the game. And so I love that these guys react in a way that's about caring for their friend, even though they're basically doomed to certain death.
Son, there are men down there and they're gonna drown!
Lieutenant Hellerman, you have your orders. Now seal a goddamn bay before we all go down.
That's the tough decision.
Yep.
That's what he had to do.
And you can tell that he is conflicted about it, but he knows it has to get done.
And Hans Zimmer's music is heavy and serious, and we feel the desperation and the futility and the tragedy of the moment. And then that water just starts rising so fast after that thing broke. And here's how they did it. And I love this little piece of filmmaking, which is, yes, they have powerful hoses shooting a whole bunch of water into this space, but not enough water for it to rise that level, to fill that space at that speed. So what's actually happening is the water isn't rising. The entire set is lowering into a tank.
Wow.
And that's why it's filling so fast.
That's great.
Isn't that really smart?
Yeah, very.
And watching him try to seal the hatch on this, looking at, honestly, the water pressure, there's no way a human would be able to close that thing. But,
yeah, that's true too.
But he does close it. And I love his anger when he gets back on the comms and says, because you can hear that he feels he was just forced to murder his shipmates.
Basically.
Come on, bilge bay! The water hatch is sealed, sir!
Denzel Washington's very soft and simple and rich with context. Very well. It's great.
This is interesting because you look at this situation, right? And this is how fickle sometimes fandom can be, right? When he's averting the nuclear sub and they shoot the nuclear sub, I bet all of them are like, well, I guess he made the right move and he's in charge and it's great. And then seconds later, that missile explodes near them, it's torpedo rather, and essentially possibly dooms the boat to its death. And you add on to the fact that they are stressing out that the ship is going down. Now he's basically commanded a young serviceman to kill 3 other people. And it seemed like this guy had some really personal connections to these guys, the way he was saying their names. And so now that's going to get, broadcast around by everybody talking. And so is that going to cause some of the men to be like, well, look how inexperienced, maybe Captain Ramsey could have saved those guys. There's that stuff could build up there from the ground up. So it's an interesting situation that the movie puts Hunter in almost immediately after he takes control of the ship.
I think Ramsey's line about you're not ready to make the tough decisions, which obviously he was. I mean, he
right. Oh, sure.
He performed brilliantly.
Yeah.
At each step along the way. But the thing about that term, tough decisions, and people who haven't been in leadership positions just I don't think feel this or understand it. You are going to piss people off.
Yes.
You are going to make people unhappy. You're going to make yourself unhappy.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to. He's going to carry the guilt of those guys who died in the bilge bay for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
But that doesn't protect him from the righteous and justified anger of the guy who had to do it. That's what you live with, you know, I'm going to make decisions that some people aren't going to like, and they're never going to like it, and they're right to not like it.
Right.
But I'm going to do that anyway. That's the tough decisions. And the thing is, it hasn't solved the problem because we are still going down.
Yep. Because
it is. Yeah. We're at 1,800 feet, 1,825. The music is powerful. Everyone knows that this might be their last moments on Earth, that they're about to die. And just, of course, as always, at the last possible second, we've restored propulsion and we start to come up. And it's really Rivetti who goes,
We're living, gentlemen.
that I love.
And Cobb even has a smile on his face, with a little bit of a smile come across his face. Yeah.
I love, by the way, and it's something, maybe it's mostly in military movies, but my guess is it exists in the actual military too. I love the use of the word gentleman.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Particularly coming from Rivetti, who obviously seems to be someone who was not of the upper classes.
Well,
you know?
yes. And also, yes, and I'm glad you said that because I think that's why Hunter says what he says to him after he has that fight with Benefield. Like he says to him, you're going to do this. You have the potential for more, as I said earlier. So he's schooling him in that moment. And clearly the film shows you that he is in charge of that area. He's a supervisor, right? You're a supervisor is what Hunter says to him. So he is a supervisor. So in that moment, he's calming his own section of men down by saying, all right, gentlemen, we're living. You know, it's his way of supervising them by giving them some hope, some inspiration, some joy there in that moment, you know, and some confidence that they've got through this tough part.
Well, and to me, I always, and this largely comes from my experience working with veterans when I was teaching, but I just saw so much responsibility and discipline and respect. And I just think about, you know, a guy like Rivetti who, you know, I don't know what his situation was or how he ended up joining the military, but I think of this incredible benefit that he's getting of under great officers and leadership to learn systems and discipline and leadership skills himself so that he can be, you know, and so he can become this new kind of person. I have the ultimate respect for it.
Yeah. People have a stereotype about the military that drives me nuts. It's not all Doherty. It's not all Benefield guys. There are a lot of Rivettis in the military. There are a lot of people who care about their service. A lot of people actually aren't stupid or aren't from lower education backgrounds. There are quite a lot of people who really take their service seriously and learn the lessons of service seriously. And so sometimes I think the stereotypes of people, some people who don't like the military they're not accurate. It doesn't mean there aren't some people like that in there. It's just not the entire military is like.
Speaking of maybe some other kind of characters that do inhabit the military, Doherty, James Gandolfini, comes rushing down the hall to the captain's quarters.
Step aside, Tommy.
I'm sorry, sir. The XO ordered us.
Fuck the XO! The ship has been hit, and I'm going in to see my captain. Now stand aside. Stand aside!
Which they do.
Yeah, because he yells at them to stand. He basically physically threatens them. And, you know, it's guys like that drives me nuts. But he's clearly freaked out. He's scared himself. And he's running to his daddy, basically, to help him out of the situation.
My feeling about this, I 100% agree with Doherty on everything that he's doing in this particular moment. Except for his method. Is that it is absolutely correct. The ship was almost sinking. There was all sorts of damage to check on Captain Ramsey and make sure he's okay.
Right.
That is 100% correct.
Totally. If you're looking at it, the most utopian approach to it, yes. But this is Doherty.
Yeah. The fuck the XO and all that stuff and what he actually wants. No.
Yeah.
Doherty is not my guy.
100%.
I've just been looking at Hunter's file here. Closest to combat he's been is a policy seminar.
Which I'm sure is true, but is also basically true for everybody else on this boat.
And it is for everyone before they get in control of it.
Yeah. Because the real thing is he performed brilliantly in this last movie. And it has nothing to do with, it doesn't matter that he didn't have experience before. He's got experience now,
Right.
Right.
And nothing would make Ramsey feel even more threatened than Hunter performing well through these tough scenarios.
Yeah.
Especially when he just told him, as you said, Steve, that he doesn't think he's ready to make the tough decision.
Give me an order, sir.
And we all know what that means.
Yeah.
That is not this is now a mutiny. That's what this means.
As quietly as you can, you get to Mr. Zimmer and Mr. Westergaard.
How about Linkletter?
Now, you won't be able to talk to the TSO. He's at the con. But you can get to Weps. We gotta have Weps. He's the key.
These are very clear, very specific orders from a very good military leader.
Yeah, and he clearly feels that he's in the right to do this, and this is his tactical decision. But I also think the film, by having Doherty be the one that goes to him, not Zimmer, not the other guys, not Westergaard, and especially not Weps, it shows you that this is possibly not the right path to take. And so, but you see he's making his moves. And when do you make your moves as a military tactician? When things are shaky. And so it's a smart move for what he wants to accomplish.
Well, and what's particularly smart, or at least sounds smart to me, is...
Don't get overzealous now and try to recruit the whole ship. Lead from the top down.
Aye, sir.
He's smart about that. He knows exactly how to put this in motion because he knows some people aren't going to be happy with him being replaced. He's been with these guys for a long time. Yeah. Doherty is like his unofficial human dog. Well, he has a regular dog and he has Doherty,
Absolutely. Well, and this is, I don't know if I'll put this, but I'll say it in a weird way.
Okay.
Part of the job of a leader is to use whatever tools are available.
Yes.
This is who came to the door. If Weps had come to the door, or if Westergaard had come, he would have done something different. This is who he got,
Yeah.
Doherty goes to Weps.
What's going on? We're not going to let this go down with the XO at the helm.
We're not.
No, we're not.
Here's why I think that's so important.
Yeah.
Is you and I have differences of opinions about Ramsey's motivations, but it's very clear the line, we're not going to let this go down with the XO at the helm, is not about proper orders. It's not about nuclear war.
No.
It is not about whether or not the Russians are launching their missile. Doherty's entire motivation is about the captain and the XO. It is personal.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say his entire motivation is that, because I think it's pretty clear that he's a racist. And so for me, I think there's an element of that as well. There is an element of, and I can't discount that in the movie. I don't think, obviously, I don't think Zimmer or Westergaard or Weps, obviously, are not racist. But I think Doherty is clearly showed to be a man of low character and low opinions. And later, when they retake the ship, the fact that he's the one that tries to grab Hunter, I think that's on purpose. And even when the missiles and the order is correct, there's a cut to Doherty, and Doherty's almost upset that they didn't get a chance to start nuclear war. So he's not a good guy. So I wouldn't say the only motivation or the singular. I think there is an element of racism to this guy, because what does he do? He told the heavy black guy to go down there and give him 20. So I think that's on purpose, those scenes to show you that, in my opinion.
So where I put it is, I think there are implications of racism, or I would say that the movie wants you to think about racism.
Sure.
There's no question about that.
Yeah.
I think there is an implication that Doherty might be racist, not direct evidence that he is. So, like, we didn't see what would have happened if a fat white guy came in, would he have done the same thing? He might not like fat people.
Well, because we don't see it.
Because we don't see it.
With what this movie is giving me.
I cannot, in any definitive way, say that he is not racist. But I also, and I think there is an implication, that very strong implication, that he might be. Yeah. But I don't feel that I can say definitively that that is his motivation.
I've been with the captain for years, and this asshole Hunter shows up, and I'm supposed to follow him because he says so?
You're not supposed to. You've been ordered to. That's what this is about, proper orders.
I mean, again, we're going back to the fundamental issues of what this movie is about.
Mm-hmm. He's in command now. If they order him to launch, we'll launch. I won't blow them all to hell. But I'd rather go down myself and get this one wrong.
Dude, I'm right there.
It's very noble.
Well, and I mean, frankly, no one's ever going to put me in charge of nuclear bombs. I'm never going to be in the silo. I'm not getting elected president. But I'm going to fuck that up right now because I think if I was that person who had the choice to launch, there's a damn good chance I just wouldn't launch.
Even if you knew you should launch?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because it's so, because you're talking about, I mean, that's why you shouldn't put me in there.
Right, right.
You know,
you're not ready to make the tough decisions.
I am not ready to make that tough decision.
That situation. You can make a tough decision on a set, but not maybe in a nuclear situation.
Because the fact on a fundamental level, I don't actually think an American life is more valuable than a Russian life. I think a life is a life.
You value life, period.
I value life. Yeah. And so the decision with limited information and all this stuff of like going, I might very well be starting World War III, destroying the earth, or at the least killing millions of innocent people. Maybe I just don't do it. You know, I don't know the answer, and this is why you don't put me in there. I literally don't know the answer to this question. I think this is really hard.
And I think it would be really hard for anybody who's in that position, who has a remote level of consciousness to them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And many military people do, regardless of the stereotype.
Look, our procedures are clear. In the absence of a contravening order, in a situation like this, we follow the orders in hand.
Exactly.
I think that from everything I've read, that is absolutely correct.
Yes.
And that order that they received was verified, and the second order is not verified.
Rodchenko is fueling his burst. Now, why do you think he's doing that? Why? You don't put on a condom unless you're gonna fuck.
That's a Tarantino line.
Totally. I hadn't thought about it before. You're right. It's got to be a Tarantino line. And I love the moment that an innocent seaman just walks up.
Yeah, just walks in.
Go back to your station. Go back to your station. Stay there.
I think it might have been a Make-A-Wish kid who won a day on the set with a Tony Scott film, just wandering on.
Yeah, exactly.
He has no business coming in there. I don't know why you even put a scene like that in there.
And then I think this moment is great.
Peter, think about your family, man.
I am.
It is crazy to watch Viggo in these films in the 90s.
Yeah.
Because nothing about them makes me think he's going to be Aragorn in a way that has this, I use the term gravitas. Because when he plays these characters, they don't have that. They have a nobility to them. But he's kind of a little bit of how can I say this correctly? He's not as strong here, right? Not as strong in Carlito's Way, not as strong in these other roles, but it's like when he becomes Aragorn, like everything seems to change for him in his career. It's fascinating.
But he's not asked to, as an actor, it's like, what are you asked to do? If he came in full Aragorn at this moment, it would ruin this movie. Webb he has to be vacillating.
Oh, no, I know. I'm just saying, I don't see the energy because you can always, you can see like Denzel's never not had that energy from Carbon Copy with George Segal. He's always had this kind of, even St. Elsewhere, he's always had this kind of like imperious energy. And I don't know if I ever felt that about Viggo until I saw him in Lord of the Rings. Now, he may very well had it, but I have never seen it in his performances. So it makes it all the more amazing that he was able to really step up to the plate and bring Aragorn to life in the way that he did.
Now it's just so imagine. It'd be so interesting to cast Denzel as an ineffectual, frail, nervous, and see if he could do it.
Well, I mean, he did do Macbeth.
Yeah, but Macbeth is a great hero. I mean, he's a tough guy and then gets messed up later on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think of him for things like that, right? You don't really think of him because even Manchurian Candidate, when he's like being turned in sideways, he still has that kind of defiance to him.
I just talked to the captain in his room. He specifically asked for you. He says we cannot go without you.
I don't believe this.
This is pressuring, right? This is basically, it's not necessarily bullying, but it's guilting him into it. Like the captain asked for you. You were specifically who he mentioned. You are important to the situation. And what did Webb say earlier? Captain's a hard ass. Can't you just get along with him? Can't you just go along and, just go along until you don't have to anymore? I can get off the ship. And so he's not a guy, Webb, who's going to like try to rock the boat. He's a guy that goes along. So if he senses that all the other officers are on board with this mutiny, quote unquote, then he's not a guy who's going to be like, I will stand in defiance of it. He goes along with it, which is sad. And they knew which buttons to push on him,
Well, and again, this all goes to our interpretations of what's going on and what we think of Ramsey, and therefore our interpretations of what does Webs think of Ramsey and all that stuff, But they do say, they lay it out, as you say, really clear.
This is a mutiny, Peter. There's only two sides to a mutiny. Now your captain is asking for your help. What are you going to do?
And they're great shots of sweaty Vigo. And I don't know what the climate control options are on a submarine.
Yeah.
But they've made a clear choice that we're going to get real sweaty.
It's kind of in that red light. And look, if you were ready to launch nuclear weapons to kill millions of people, I imagine you might have a little perspiration as well. And you're about to be part of a mutiny, quote unquote, so.
I stink at this point. Like, I'm really reeking. The sweat, the stress sweat, and the humidity, and we almost died like 5 minutes ago.
Right. You're just
like, I am ripe.
You're like Jordan Peele in that sketch, just dripping from your head. Yeah.
And the camera sits on him, and you can feel him debating, and he finally says, all right. And even in the moment that he says it, I think you can see in his performance that he hates himself for that decision.
Yeah. Oh no, totally. Yeah.
This is not a I 100% believe in what I'm doing. This is a 51-49. He went back and forth 17 times about where he was going to go. And to me, and again, this where our different interpretations of Ramsey make a big difference, is to me, I think that Webs' character absolutely thinks he's a hard ass and might not agree with everything, but thinks he's also a great captain and is honored to serve under him.
Yes.
And is thinking about those orders and orders in hand versus the garbled orders versus his loyalty to Hunter versus him wanting to know, him not wanting to destroy the world, thinking about his family. And all of that is roiling around in his brain until he finally agrees to side with Captain Ramsey.
Yeah.
And I think at this moment, that the ship, the USS Alabama, has split into two factions is a good time to end part 2 of our exploration of Crimson Tide.
We tried, y'all. We tried to make this under 2 parts, but there is too much to talk about. And I hope you all agree that we are doing a really good job of breaking this thing down and talking about all the things that go on in this film. And I just hope personally that you guys are enjoying our back and forths and how we're if you agree with us or don't, or agree with us separately or don't, I hope you feel we're doing the film justice, because I think this was a great suggestion by Steve, and kind of like Sideways at the beginning of the year. I had no idea we were going to be going this long on this movie, because I had totally forgotten about so much that happens in this film, and I'm just glad we're doing it. And it feels very topical to everything that's going on in our world right now.
Well, and of course, since, obviously things have been contentious with John and I, we'd love to hear your opinions. I don't mean weigh in on Steve is right and John is wrong, or John is right and Steve is wrong. I don't mean that. No, I actually mean I would like to hear your opinions.
Yeah, we would.
What do you think? How do you respond to all these things that are going on in this film? You can visit us on Facebook by doing a search for The Cine-Files at Cine_Files on X, The Cine-Files podcast on Instagram. And of course, if you really wanted to get in the conversation, patreon.com/The Cine-Files. You could have listened to this episode ad-free, spend a little more, and you could listen to all of our Crimson Tide episodes combined into one. Also, our Cine-Files shorts, and joining our advisory board. I am certain we're going to be talking about Crimson Tide on our advisory board meeting just in a couple of hours from right now.
Yeah.
So you should definitely check that out at patreon.com/Cine-Files. You can also support the show through Apple Podcasts, which is super easy. If you're an Apple person, you could buy or stream Crimson Tide along with every other movie we've ever reviewed at cinephiles.net. And you can reach me at SR Morris on Twitter, SR Morris1 on Instagram. John, how would they reach you?
You can also reach me at The Rocha Says on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, and Threads that I'm there on. And my YouTube channel, please head on over there at youtube.com/John Rocha Says, where I have all my other content that exists and lives there as well. Thank you.
And we will be back next week to conclude, I'm saying it right now, John, to conclude our exploration of Crimson Tide right here on the Cine-Files.